For the second part of this project, you are going to pretend that I just hired you to finish a video game for me, and you have about 4 hours to do it. 4 hours is about 4 class periods. Before we get started, if you're here, you should have finished this last lesson and then turned in your project here. So as an example of what you'll have when you're completely done with this project, you will have part 1 that you built with me and then added one of my mechanics to. And you will have part 2 where you took what you learned or built in part 1 and turned into your own original game. This will be due next week. Now, yours does not have to look exactly like your part 1 game. I just decided to turn part 2 into this. You can use any or all or none of what you built in part 1 to make your original game in part 2. And after you get done with part 2 and turn it in next week, what I'm going to do is compare your part 1 to your part 2. You get a grade on part 1 first. That's due by March 5th. And then I will pull both your games up and compare the two. The only real rule that I have as far as what I want for part 2, aside from making it original and getting creative with it, is that I don't want 5 levels. I only want 1 or a maximum of 2 really good levels. I will be posting videos and how-tos that you don't have to do, but will be there if you run out of ideas, or if you just need or want some new ideas. To help you get started, I'll tell you how I and how many other developers make their games. The first thing they usually do is build the mechanics, just like you did. They don't design a world or build art. They build a few mechanics, enough to build a working game, then they design the game around the mechanics. As far as creative projects go, one of the cool things about building video games is there are so many disciplines or areas or fields involved that when you get bored or stuck in one area, you can work on another area. For example, if you're trying to build a mechanic or your brain is fried on building code, you can go ahead and work on the art. And when you get tired of working on the art for whatever reason, you can go and work on adding sound effects. Keep that in mind when you're working. If you get stuck or just bored on working on one aspect of the game, go ahead and move to another. And I'll be posting plenty of help for you and ideas sources like this. These are tiny snippets of game mechanics where you can look at the code and get ideas. Here are some more. So if you want to add, for example, a moving platform, what you're going to do to start this part of the project is first, you're going to create a clone of the game, a clone of the clone that you just submitted for part 1 of this project. So you're going to clone what you turned in here. And that is because we are going to compare what you did and created via my videos, and then compare that to what you created on your own. So clone that game. You can kind of call it what you want, but I would call it my game part 2, and then maybe put the date. Now, like I said, you're going to take what you learned here or what you built in this past week and use any or all of it to create your own game. So to sum up, you're going to be turning in your game so far according to these directions after you have completed lesson 7. This is due by the 5th of March, no exceptions. If it's not turned in, it's going to be a 0 for this portion, and that's 125 points. When you turn in part 1 of your game, you're going to go ahead and work on part 2, which is making the game your own. As always, if you have any questions or you don't understand anything that I explained here, raise your hand so I can explain it to you before the weekend. Good luck have fun, and I really can't wait to see what you create. Take care.